Hey, Bobby Manning here, Noah Dalzell alongside from the Auerbach Center, where we just heard from Brad Stevens on a variety of topics following this season here. Though the biggest one we didn't hear that he slashed off the topic list right away was the future, which is what everyone was wondering here. The apron implications, how much of a demand there'll be to slash payroll from the ownership, all those different things we're looking ahead to here. He mostly wanted to look back, and that's all we have for now until draft night, he said.
Yeah, so we have a little over a month until we kind of get into that. And honestly, I think part of it is just there's no advantage for him to talk, but also I'm sure he's just processing everything that's changed. You know, a week ago, this team was in a very different situation, so I'm sure they don't actually have the answers to everything. But I think we got a little bit of clarity on a few things, or at least his attempt at clarity, and that's Jaylen Brown and kind of his health status, Kristaps Porzingis, but not so much about whether they're going to take next year as a gap year or try to tank or whatever else. Like, those things were really not addressed in this conference.
Yeah, and he's hoping to keep them competitive, hoping to keep them in the championship mix, but when that's going to be, not clear right now. Also not clear to me, Jaylen's status right now. We praised him. I think he affirmed him in many ways, had said he has full faith in him, but that combined with him not addressing the future of this team, to me, doesn't give me much more confidence that he's going to be here next year beyond what I have right now, which is fairly high confidence. I don't think he pointed to any specifics that made me think, all right, he's absolutely going to be here next year. He did the whole, we're going to rely on everybody here. I guess the closest he came is probably saying that when you have Jaylen, when you have Jayson, you're going to have a pretty good chance to win.
And that's honestly how I feel. I feel like that's what I've been saying, that those two guys are so unique in this league as far as they've always been on competitive teams. They've always been a big part of why the teams have been competitive. And I do think that Brad believes that, you know, having those two guys, or even one of them right next year, but two down the road, puts you in a great place from a team building standpoint. Obviously, their contracts are a lot more difficult than they used to be, so there are some constraints. He didn't say anything that was like, whether, you know, Jaylen Brown is going to be carrying us next year, and that's he didn't say anything that was super definitive, which honestly I don't think one thing that he said at this entire press conference was super definitive. But again, I think
that they're not drafting Cooper Flagg.
Yes, so that was pretty definitive. But I think in general, like, his tone seemed a little bit like what just happened, and I need a couple weeks to figure this out. And he continued to point to games 1 and 2. Everybody's bringing it up, but he really felt like there wasn't a fundamental issue with this roster. There wasn't a coaching issue or a personnel issue. They choked away those first 2 games, and everybody feels that way.
Do you think he needs time, or do you think they know and just don't want to put it out there yet?
No, I think he needs time because he's been thinking all year about this, and I'm sure he had lots of ideas. But Tatum tore his Achilles a week ago, and so that changed a lot of things, and he acknowledged that. He was asked that, and he didn't deny that. And so, like, that, you know, that processing started that night, but I'm sure there's been the initial emotions, and he said, you know, I kind of told my front office team, like, let's take a few days to just process, because you don't want to do anything rash. I mean, we were standing here the night that Tatum got injured. I'm sure we said some crazy things around, like, what the future was going to. No, we all did.
Okay,
and so
I did too.
I think that's what they want to avoid, right? You don't want decision makers to be acting out of impulse. Like, I remember just being in the building that night, you know, changed my view of the future of this team. And so I generally think he doesn't have the answers, and I'm sure we'll get a little bit more clarity around the draft. Probably not that much more clarity, though.
On Jaylen's injury, you brought it up. Said it's going to be rest here. I don't think he ruled out surgery specifically. He didn't get asked about the prospect of surgery, so I think it's rest for now and then see where it goes from there. Everyone's going to ask, though, and he didn't get the question today, should it have been rest in March? Should it have been rest through that stretch where he pushed through it there, given that it was a long-running injury with the meniscus tear that they knew about, which he said today that they consulted the doctors, that that was known for some period of time here. I don't know if that veers from Jaylen's statement at that time that it's not going to get better with rest, that it's just going to be something that they have to live with there. But I still think there's some uncertainty there about where that injury is going. Now, everyone I've talked to doctor-wise said that it's not that severe of a thing, that many people play through this type of injury. So I think that aligns with what he said today. But the one thing that confused me most was the no structural damage thing, which he called back to. I would not have called back to that statement.
I need a doctor to weigh in on this one, because I vividly remember before the Knicks season started, you asked Jaylen about his knee. Yeah, the Knicks series. And he said, you know, I'm turning a corner, I'm feeling better, and there's no structural damage. And that was like great news, right? Because we didn't know exactly what was going on behind the scenes. And so that information kind of guided our thinking of his injury for a while, right? then we see that he's still struggling. Then we see that it's clear he's still not exploding the same way. He alludes to kind of something going wrong, whatever. And then obviously this ESPN report comes out this past weekend that he has a partially torn meniscus that he's been playing on. I thought that what Brad said today very much aligned with Jaylen's comments from before the series. And Brad also said that he's been feeling better and better, and that he told him after the Knicks series that he's feeling better. So this might be something that might just get better. That's I guess the big question is, can this just improve on its own with rest? My biggest concern is, like, could it have gotten a lot worse if he has one bad landing? Like, could you blow an ACL from something like that? Could you just fully tear your meniscus? So I guess crisis averted in that sense, but definitely a lot of conflicting information and conflicting feelings around this injury.
Yeah, for sure, and I'll be interested to see where that one goes. Anything else stand out to you from this one? Porzingis probably the big one, that it was a post-viral syndrome, which I think we all assumed, despite all the variety of crazy conspiracies and theories people have about it out there. They expect it to clear up by the time he plays for Latvia this summer, and that is the plan, that he's going to play overseas for the national team. And that makes me feel slightly better about the prospect of bringing him back here. I had concerns about the injury and the long-term implications of it. He said that wasn't a massive concern for him when we asked him about it after the series. But he is a guy in the mix to potentially go out the door here, expiring contract, all that. As we discussed the other night, if you don't get a massive, or not massive, any return for him, maybe he is someone you bring into the season.
Well, especially because you're down a score. And I think what I never liked about the Porzingis fit this season, less so than last year, is just sometimes it just felt too crowded. I never thought that Tatum and Porzingis played particularly well together, and I think the numbers kind of back that up as well. But if you need somebody to kind of carry you through and just provide some points on the board, and he is turned a corner, there might be some value in bringing him back. And then I just want to add the caveat that obviously Brad Stevens is going to make Jaylen's knee sound pretty good right now, and Porzingis' illness sound pretty good right now, because these are guys that potentially have trade value, also the signals of the fans. Like, there's quite literally no incentive for him to say, we're really worried about Jaylen's knee, or we're really worried about Porzingis' illness. So while I'm not saying he was being dishonest, but like I think it's just important to caveat like why, everything kind of sounds really good when you're doing these end-of-year press conferences. I still think the Porzingis thing is weird. I don't think there's any lying to us about it. Porzingis is really honest with the media and really open, and he told us himself, like, I think I'm fine, but maybe I should do more testing. Like, so this post-viral syndrome thing, like, I don't know that they actually still know exactly what's wrong with him. They might never know, or maybe they will when they do more testing. But to me, it's still a little bit of a question, just because we saw him kind of unable to turn the corner for a few months. And if we see him play well in Latvia and just like have that win back, I think that's going to be a really good sign. So I agree with Brad that it's a good thing that he's playing through it.
Horford's future, a factor in that, as well as the other things we're talking about here as well. That did not come up today, but still a major decision hovering over this team. We'll hear more about those guys' future closer to draft time, as Brad Stevens said today. But I think that was the gist of it. Is there anything else that stood out to you?
No, I think there's still a lot of directions that this offseason could go, and I don't think we gained a ton of clarity as expected. But I think we probably will a little bit more in June. But honestly, like, this whole offseason is going to probably have a lot of rumors and a lot of turns and twists, and we're going to kind of be along for the ride.
Yeah, draft, the other one. Doesn't expect major movement in the draft there. A lot of it's going to be reacting to what happens in front of them. He mentioned that as well today, is the fact that they have a lot of good players, and they're all under contract. So that gives them
I think that's
a lot
actually
of
a
directions
legitimate
they can
point.
go.
Like, obviously, that's any GM wants to say that, but I actually think that people are talking about the future of this team.
Derek White,
they
Drew
do have a lot
Holiday,
of really good
Porzingis.
players. Like, I think a lot of other teams would love to have the really good players that the Celtics have, even without Tatum.
I keep hearing Derek White's name. I don't know what
Because
to
he's so
make
valuable.
of it.
And, like, who wouldn't want Derek White on their team, especially with that contract? Like, it's a good contract. So I don't think it's any indication of whether or not Boston wants him. It's a question of he's just one of their biggest assets.
Shout out to our sponsor, Prize Picks. Guys, download the app today and use the code CLNS to get $50 instantly when you play your first $5 lineup. Again, that's the code CLNS to get $50 instantly when you play your first $5 lineup. Prize Picks, run your game.